In this video, I'm going to be going over a very interesting and mysterious manuscript that I recently received, so you're going to want to stick it out for the full video to see a really interesting conclusion about what exactly this mysterious manuscript might be. As I mentioned in the introduction, the manuscript that I have in my collection is a very mysterious and strange manuscript. I purchased it as a bulk of manuscripts off of an auction house, and so when I received it, I had a bunch of manuscripts to sift through, and as I was going through it, I found this particular manuscript here. A very interesting and unique manuscript. It is in pretty rough condition. You can see a very clear tear here, what looks like a potential intentional cutting there, but it's very mysterious. I don't know exactly what would have caused that, but it, of course, could be from just being damaged over the hundreds of years that this was around. Could also be due to being a part of a book binding or something along those lines. But it's still a very beautiful and nice manuscript. The text that is visible is very clear, very crisp, and just a really overall good condition parchment that is still remaining. Looking into this particular manuscript, when I received it, one of the first things I wanted to do is to, of course, figure out what is this manuscript? What are the contents? How old is it? Where it might have been produced? And so these are questions that I had in mind, and so I wanted to do some digging or research into that. And when I first looked at it, the very first thing I noticed was the type of text or font that's on there. It's a very old-looking manuscript. I have a lot of manuscripts in my collection ranging over 1,000 years, and so I get pretty familiar with the types of script that's used on these different manuscripts, and this one definitely looked a lot older. And so, of course, I wanted to do more research on that. So to do that, we have to look at the background, or the exact context of what this manuscript is. And of course, that was also my first thought. What is this particular manuscript? Is it from a Bible? Is it some kind of liturgical document or other kind of theological writing? So I had to do some research and had to try and look into the specific content on here. And so I know that this is written in Latin, and so I had to look at the Latin text to try and interpret what it may be. And so the text appears to be from Augustine's writing, his style where he blends logical arguments with biblical exegesis. He focuses on profound theological reflections such as the unity of the Trinity and the nature of divine communication. Augustine often addressed these topics in his sermons to guide the faithful on complex doctrinal matters. That being said, the leaf was of course written in Latin, as I mentioned previously, and seems to come from a text attributed to St. Augustine of Hippo, specifically from one of his theological works. Based on its content, it appears to be from Sermon 71, or the Johannes Evangelium Tractatus. That is also in English, Tractates on the Gospel of John. This is a series of homilies or theological commentaries written by St. Augustine of Hippo. This work consists of 124 tractates or treatises composed between 406 and 430 AD and offers a detailed exposition of the Gospel of John chapter by chapter and verse by verse. So it's a very interesting context there, seeing that this is part of an Augustine work. Very nice, very detailed, and something I really enjoyed having. I don't have any other Augustine writings, at least in antiquity things. I have other his books, but not any of these ancient writings. So having this really old manuscript is really cool to have in my collection. So now that I know what the content is, I know that it is from Augustine, I wanted to then look at the age. And one of the things we have to do when we go into that is called the paleographic study, or the looking at text or font or the script. This is one of the primary ways we go about dating a particular manuscript like this. So to first grasp the dating, we'll have to consider a few things. Looking at this manuscript, we can see that the handwriting reflects typical Carolingian minuscule. That is the type of script or font that was used for this manuscript. Carolingian minuscule was standardized under Charlemagne around 800 AD and remained prevalent until the Gothic script emerged in the 12th century. Now, features of this type of script to help us date are things such as the following. So one of the things you can see are rounded letter forms. For example, the A there with an open top. And then you have the E with a clear loop that is also seen on the image there. You have the unsealed D and long ascenders, often seen in manuscripts from the 10th or early 11th century. There's a lack of abbreviations or ligatures, commonly seen in later scripts. The parchment quality itself suggests a high-quality manuscript, typical of monastic scriptoria, and the ruling or scoring of lines into the parchment shows precision, characteristic of manuscripts from the 10th to 11th century, as scoring techniques evolved during this period. So when you have manuscripts like this, especially the later ones, you'll have the scoring on there, usually some kind of lighter pencil or ink that they would have to basically make a notebook type format. But before that, they would use a dull implement like a knife or something like that to score the actual animal skin here, and having nice straight lines that they can then write between as they're producing this manuscript. And so having those physical scores is an indication that it is older. So with those things in mind, with those different characteristic or features that I've brought out, this could most certainly be dated between 900 and 1000 AD, which is extremely old, would make it one of the older manuscripts in my collection. Now I could be wrong on this, but all the signs point to it being the 10th to 11th century. But I know for sure that it's no later than the 12th century. So now that we know that Augustine's writings is potentially from the 10th or 11th centuries, we now want to look at where exactly this may have been produced. It's a very nice and beautiful manuscript, and so we want to look at the regional indicators. Where may have this particular manuscript been written or produced hundreds of years ago, potentially 1,000 or more years ago? Based off of the contents that is from Augustine's writing, the type of script that's used there is Carolingian, so because of that script we can kind of narrow it down to at least the European region. But all signs point to it being potentially Italian origin, so it's very likely from Italy, which means it couldn't have been produced in the Monte Cassino scriptorium, but I don't know that for sure. That's just an educated guess. I did consult with a few people who also agree that this is very likely from Italy, but that of course is up for debate. So in closing, with all of these things in mind, the manuscript is, of course, in Latin writing. It's from Augustine's works, likely Sermon 71 or from the Gospel of John, very possibly dated to the 10th or 11th century, and was possibly produced in Italy. So it's a very, very interesting item. A quick disclaimer, though, this information is an educated guess on the particular manuscript. I don't know all the specific details. This is just the research that I've done off of this particular piece. So although I believe it's very likely correct, these things that I've said, I'm still working with other experts and professionals on this to get more information about this particular manuscript. So of course you're going to want to subscribe to the YouTube channel so you don't miss out on videos like that. I'll do a new video on this specific manuscript once I have a lot more information about it, when I know more about what this is. I'll definitely do one where I correct or update or confirm what I've talked about in this video. So of course, subscribe so you don't miss that. You can also check out my YouTube shorts. I do those every other day where I talk about different Bible stories and I tie it into items like this one I just showed you. And of course, stick around for those close-up shots, and I'll see you guys in the next video.